Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Jewelry Resellers Podcast. My name is Desiree. I'm your host, and you know I like to always say I'm also your jewelry reselling bestie. Today, we are going to talk about something fun, at least I think it's fun, as it relates to organizing and setting up our space for our jewelry reselling business. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about. I mean, yes, we think about a space to run our business, do what we have to do, but are we really focused on making it as efficient, maybe as functional, as we could possibly make it? Well, I'm hoping that by the end of this episode that I will inspire you to re-examine the space where you run your jewelry reselling business and all of its related activities and think about how you can set up your space to help you not only do your job better, but in some ways maybe even, help your outlook, maybe your perspective as it relates to being a jewelry reseller and running a profitable jewelry reselling business. So, before we get started with that, I always like to remind you to go ahead and visit our website, which is jewelryresellerspodcast.com, because over there you can listen to all of the past episodes as well as take a look at some of the other goodies that I have over there for you, which include blog posts and I can't remember what else. Oh, there's some, links there that I think could be very helpful. Also, if you're looking to get started in learning how to sell vintage jewelry online, I do have a course that you can check out there as well. All right. So again, that is jewelryresellerspodcast.com. So let's go ahead and get started with today's topic, and that is how to create a functional jewelry space. I mean, maybe not necessarily functional, because when I was kind of evaluating my own space, and I've kind of gone through this in the past where I have tried to set up a quote unquote jewelry room and it didn't quite go as I wanted it to. And um, now my space is, I think it's functional, but it's not necessarily like a pretty aesthetically pleasing, Instagram worthy or Pinterest board worthy looking space. And I'm not saying that that's the goal, but for some of us, we may want to do that because we get, more inspired and more creative in spaces that appeal to us. All right. So we're going to cover kind of all the aspects that I have thought about as it relates to this. And of course, I have my notes in front of me, and, we really want to prioritize having a dedicated jewelry space, for our reselling business, because there's a lot of things that we do and it may be different from other resellers or maybe other types of jewelry businesses. And a lot of us work from home, so we have to figure out what's going to work for us, what can we afford, and how much space we have. So like I said, I really hope that this episode inspires you to kind of evaluate your space and see how you can make it more, I guess, supportive of your jewelry business and your goals. All right, so let's talk about some of the reasons why we want to have a dedicated jewelry space for our reselling business. Having a dedicated space is essential for growing and scaling a jewelry reselling business because it enhances efficiency, professionalism, and organization, all of which are key to maintaining and expanding your systems and your operations as it relates to your business. Now, let's get into some of the reasons why this is true. Number one, having a dedicated space as it relates to your jewelry reselling business will improve your efficiency and your productivity. And this is something that I mentioned not too long ago. A dedicated space allows you to streamline tasks such as photographing your jewelry, packing orders, managing inventory, sorting through inventory without wasting time setting up and breaking down each time you do something business related. All right, everything you need will be organized and accessible, helping you work faster and more efficiently. The other thing we want to think about is having separate areas and separate spaces in our overall space for specific tasks. And we're going to talk about this because um, I have a list of the 5 areas we want to have as it relates to our jewelry space. Now, some of these areas can, double, or maybe you just use one area for everything. But these are things we have to think about when we are setting up our space. All right, so this will help to reduce distractions when you're working, and it allows you to focus on the specific task that you're doing or the specific aspect of your business. Now, the other thing about having a dedicated jewelry space is that it's much more professional. Now, I know a lot of us are not trying to be, super professional as it relates to our jewelry reselling business, but we do want to maintain some type of a professional either brand or image or workflow, depending on what it is that we're doing. And we want to make sure that the quality of our work is high and our output is high. And I feel like this is something that we can definitely do when we have an organized space in which to do it. So consistent high quality photos and videos, depending on, how you sell your jewelry. You want to make sure you have a space to do that. I do live sales and I do have a dedicated space where I do my live shows, but that space is very different and it's separate from where I do my other jewelry reselling work. All right. And that may or may not work for you. That's something that you'll have to, make the decisions on as you go. Now, you also want to make sure that you have areas for packing and shipping and things like that. And like I said, we're going to talk about that in more detail coming up. Now, you also want to make sure that you're organized and that you have your inventory organized, because there's nothing worse than making a sale of a piece of jewelry and then for some reason you can't find it, or you just knew it was in this box and for some reason it's not there right now. All right, so jewelry reselling involves managing a variety of small, delicate items, making inventory control absolutely essential. So, a dedicated space will allow you to store and organize jewelry inventory properly, reducing the risk of losing or damaging items. Okay. Now, the other thing about proper storage and inventory management, I guess, is it allows you to keep track of what you have in stock. And that's really important, depending again on how you sell your jewelry. Some of us, well, I should say most of us probably sell online in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of us also do in person shows, or we sell to clients individually, one on one. And so keeping track of what we still have in stock is good, because then we know what we have and what we don't. Okay. The other aspect about having a dedicated workspace as it relates to your jewelry reselling business is scalability. And I know we don't really talk about that a lot, but as your business grows, a dedicated workspace allows you to easily scale your operations. You'll have room to expand your inventory, handle more orders, and even hire help if necessary. All right, a clutter free, organized environment makes it easier to train someone, and it also helps you, have a clear mind and you're not overwhelmed by clutter or piles of stuff everywhere. Because trust me, I've been there. All right. And that leads me into my last point of why we want to have a dedicated workspace for our jewelry reselling business is that it reduces stress and it helps to maintain a work life balance. And you wouldn't really think that, initially, but having the space to do your work and then shut it down when necessary is really important. It's important so you don't get burnt out and so you don't get overwhelmed, or so you don't get too distracted by your work when you need to be tending to things at home or with your family or other obligations or whatever. All right, so separating your workspace from your living space helps to create boundaries, making it easier to turn off work at the end of the day. This leads to better work life balance, like I said, reducing burnout, and it increases long term sustainability for your business. And the other thing, too, is like knowing that everything is where it's supposed to be. So the next day, when you go in to do your work, it gives you peace of mind knowing that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, or everything is set up, ready to go. How you set it up for the next day, however you decide to do that. All right. So, a dedicated workspace is key to staying organized, maintaining a professional image, and also working efficiently and reducing stress. And all of those are important, all right, for us to be successful jewelry resellers. All right, so let's talk about I think I have 5 areas that I think are important when it comes to thinking about our reselling space, what we need, how much space we need, okay, all of those things. So, number one, you want to have a dedicated space for photos and filming and videos if you do that, okay? So, or I should say, like live shows, like if you do live sales. Like I do on Whatnot or Poshmark Live or wherever, you want to have a dedicated space for that. Now, this could all be the same space. Like you can take your photos and do your live shows in the same space. Maybe you just change up the lighting as needed, or maybe your background or whatever, however you have it set up. But I think having a dedicated space for photos is going to help you be so much more efficient, because this is something I found out on my own, that every time I had to set something up and then take it down and then the next day set it up again, it was really demotivating, because you get into this this groove of, gosh, I don't want to have to set this up again and again and again, right? So if you can keep your photo area set up all the time, that's ideal. But sometimes we don't have that much space. So we got to work with what we have. Okay. So that's number one. You want to have a dedicated space for photos, filming, live shows if you do them. Okay. Next, we also want to have a dedicated space for office work, where we do our listings, where we may be on the phone with suppliers, maybe, printing out labels or receipts or whatever, whatever you're doing. You want to have a space where you can work on your computer in a comfortable way, where you can be focused and not be distracted by everything else that may be going on. All right. So this is, like I said, for doing your listings, any type of computer work or desk work, and then sorting too, because for us as jewelry resellers, we have to sort jewelry, especially if you buy jewelry in bulk. We need a space to dump it all out, or we need a space to kind of sort out the necklaces and the earrings, the bracelets, whatever the case may be. Okay. All right, next we do need a place for our shipping supplies. Now, this is more like just a storage space. So, where are we going to store all of our envelopes, our boxes, our bubble wrap, our tape, our scissors, all of that? And some of us use really fancy packaging when we sell our jewelry. So, we need to make sure we have a place that we can keep that neat and organized, and some place that's not where it's not going to get in the way of everything else. All right, that leads me to the next space, and this could kind of be one and the same. You need a packing and a shipping station. All right, so we need a space to store our packing supplies, and then we need a space to actually package, ship, and process our orders. All right, and it could be the same space, it doesn't have to be something different. Um, Ideally, those two areas will be close together, so that way you don't have to, waste a lot of steps, going to get your envelopes, then going to your packing and shipping area, and you don't want to have a bunch of back and forth. So we want to make sure that we set things up to be very efficient, so we don't waste time and we don't waste movement. And then finally, we are going to need a place or a dedicated space for our jewelry inventory. Now, I have seen people store their jewelry kind of all over the place. And if that's what works for you, that's what works for you. But for me, I'd rather have all of my inventory in one place, so that way I don't have to waste a lot of time searching multiple locations looking for a piece when it sells. All right, so I usually just have shelves, and then I have boxes, like little shoe size boxes, um, and that works for me. With the space and the budget and the way my brain works when I'm trying to find something. So again, you're going to have to evaluate your personality, what makes sense to you, and what space do you have for the inventory you have. All right, and again, this will probably be something that you think about for a while, and it could take you days or even weeks to figure it out. But again, it's one of those things where you have to really take into consideration, how can I maximize my space and how can I maximize my productivity. Okay, so those are the 5 areas: an area for photos, filming, an area for your office work, listing, computer work, whatever, an area for your shipping supplies, your packing and shipping station. Ideally, those two will be very close to each other. And then your actual jewelry inventory storage space. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to talk about is, I guess we can talk about breaking down each space, and why we're going to make the decisions that we make, because it's really hard to kind of just give out blanket suggestions, because all of us are not working with the same space, the same inventory. The amount of space is going to be different for all of us. And so that's why I said it's really important for you to think about what's going to work for you. All right. And take some time, take some notes, grab a notebook or whatever, and write down some ideas of how you can really make this work. Because not only is it going to be a dedicated space for your jewelry, in some ways, it's going to be a sacred space for you as a business owner, right? Because this is going to be a space that is going to be set up to support you in your goals and to support you in having success in your business. All right, so the power of a visual space. All right, so let's talk about that. That's going to be number one. This is your photo and filming area. So when I say filming area, some of us do videos for our listings, and some of us do videos for social media. And so we want to have a space where we can film videos, for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, and also a place where we can take photos of our items for listings, right? And a lot of times that will be the same space. All right, so you want to make sure that your space helps you make the best content that you can make. All right, you don't have to have any kind of fancy camera or fancy equipment, but you want to do the best with what you have. So try to make your space aesthetically appealing for you, at least. Make sure you have really good lighting. I like to film by a window because I find that natural lighting is best. But I also have a ring light that I use, especially when I'm doing my live shows. So that way my potential buyers can see the details of all the jewelry that I have, for sale that day. All right. You want to have a neutral background. Now, what I use is I just use poster board that I get from Dollar Tree. And usually one side has a color, the other side is plain white. And I use the plain white side, and I just use that as my neutral background, and it works perfectly. And then when it gets all, raggedy and bent up, I just go buy another one. So it's really easy. You also want to have camera. You can use your phone. That's what a lot of people do. A tripod or some type of a stand, so that way you can be hands free when you're filming. And then the other thing is you want to make sure that your space is quiet, right? Now, you may have background noise, maybe when you're listing or doing work on the computer. But if you are filming content or anything like that, you may want to make sure that you have a quiet space, or maybe the ability to mute your video in editing, depending on what type of content you're making. All right. So that's the first area that we want to think about. All right, so the next space we're going to talk about is your office hub, your space for your desk work. Wherever you're going to do your listings. I know some people do listings on their phone, and that's totally fine. I need to do my listings on a computer. I use my laptop, and that's what works for me. But of course, you're going to do what works for you. So you need to make sure that this space is organized, because it will really help you to think and to focus. And you're not going to be distracted again by all the stuff you have going on around you. All right. So having a designated space for your desk work improves focus, productivity, and efficiency, like we've talked about. You also want to have the ideal setup, a comfortable desk. And this is something I learned back in my corporate days, of the ergonomics of, sitting at a desk, making sure your desk chair is the proper height, make sure it's comfortable for your back and for your lower back and for your legs. You also want to make sure that your computer is the right height, so you're not straining your neck in any way, because, we spend hours on the computer. So it's really important that we are as comfortable as possible, and we're not putting any additional strain anywhere on our body while we're working. All right. And then you also want to, think about if there's any type of software or tools that you need in order to streamline what you're doing. Some of us use cross listing apps. Some of us, it may have other software or whatever, we need to do our work more efficiently. Okay. So that is space number two, your office hub or wherever you do your desk work. All right, let's talk about space number three, and this is where you are storing your supplies. We talked about storing and organizing your shipping materials. So now this is something I'm going to encourage you to really, really organized to the best of your ability. Because when you have everything organized, you can see when you're starting to run low on stuff. And that way, you know that you have to order or buy more before the stuff actually runs out. I can't tell you how many times people have told me, oh no, I ran out of tape and it was, the weekend or it was a holiday and I couldn't get to the store or whatever the case may be. All right. So you want to make sure you make this business as minimal having is a minimal amount of stress. You don't want to have to worry about running out of envelopes, tape, bubble wrap, or whatever. All right. And keeping your shipping supplies organized will help you stay on top of that, of course. All right. This also makes things really, really smooth for you as it relates to packing and shipping orders, right? Because if you have everything just at arm's reach, you can pick what you need, pack it up, do what you got to do, and then send the package on its merry way. And you're not stressed, and it's a very smooth process for you. All right, so now in your storage supply space, or your shipping supply space, I should say, um, you may want to put some shelves in. It doesn't have to be anything expensive or fancy, but you want to make sure everything is, like I said, easy to reach and then easy to put back, right? And then you can just look at everything and say, oh my gosh, the scissors are not there, or I need to order more tape or whatever. Okay. All right. Now, space number four is our packing and shipping station. Basically, this is just a flat space where you can pack and ship orders, print your labels. You may have a label printer right in that space as well, depending on how you do your labels. So you want to have space to lay out your orders and lay out your labels so nothing gets mixed up, nothing gets, lost or, whatever while you are doing that. Because packing and shipping is actually one of my favorite parts of reselling. I don't know why. I think it's because I really like to wrap gifts and stuff, and packing and shipping kind of feels like gift wrapping to me. I know it sounds really silly, but that's one of the things I like about reselling is the packing and shipping process. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I happen to enjoy it. But so you want to have a packing table with materials like your, if you ship in jewelry boxes or those cute little drawstring bags, whatever you use, tissue paper, labels, tape, bubble wrap, whatever, whatever you use. And then I also wrote down here your label printer, but I already talked about that. Oh, and a postal scale so you can weigh your packages so make sure you get the right amount of postage for that particular package. Now, since we're selling jewelry, usually it's not anything too outrageous, but if we're selling like bulk lots or if we're selling, multiples of something, we want to make sure that we weigh our items. And if we have to weigh our items, we have our scale and our label printer right there. All right, finally, we are going to talk about safe and secure storage of your jewelry inventory. All right, now I know there's some people who, they have storage units or garage or basement where they store their stuff. I keep my stuff in a spare bedroom. Whatever setup you have. One of the things you want to think about is having insurance. Now, I have homeowners insurance that does cover my jewelry inventory. So you want to make sure that you have adequate insurance if that's something you're concerned about, storing your inventory in your home. All right, because you don't want it to get damaged or destroyed, and then not be protected in any way. But protecting your inventory is critical for your reselling business. You want to make sure that items are not lost, damaged, or stolen, depending on where you are storing your jewelry reselling inventory. You also want to make sure that it's easy to get to. If for some reason you couldn't fulfill an order, it's easy for you to explain the process to someone who may have to fulfill an order for you, and it's easy for them to find the piece that they may have to ship out for you, whatever the case may be. You always want to think about all these different scenarios, because you never know, life can throw you a curveball. It's thrown me quite a few, and I know a lot of you can relate to things happening, emergencies happening, maybe not with us, but maybe with someone in our family, or anything, right? So we want to make sure that our business can continue to function, in the event of a worst case scenario situation. Okay. Um, Now, I also wrote on my notes here, the ideal setup would be someplace where you can lock things up. Again, that depends on how you store and where you store your items, or where you store your inventory. You want to have secure shelves, because you don't want to have something tipping over. You don't want to have something, falling apart on you. As well as climate control, depending on where you live. This may be very important. I live in Las Vegas. It's really hot here. So a lot of the storage places do have climate control. So that may be something that you want to think about, depending again where you're storing your inventory. All right. So we have covered quite a lot here, and I hope I gave you some things to think about. But you can see that having a dedicated space is going to take some planning and some preparation. And it's also going to take you figuring out what works for you, your personality, your workflow style, and what matters to you as it relates to being able to access whatever you need to access in your jewelry reselling business. And again, this is going to take a while for you to figure out. You may not figure it out in one day. You might, but don't put pressure on yourself thinking that you have to figure all of this out at once. So that's all I have for you today. So let's see. Let me go over some of the key takeaways from today's episode. We talked about the importance of each space, and how each individual space within your overall space contributes to a more efficient, productive, and successful jewelry reselling business. And like I said, you really want to think about how this is going to impact you, and how it's going to really help you do what you do better, or help you do what you do at a much higher level than what you're currently doing it at. All right. And, take some time to assess your setup. Are there some ways, maybe you already have a dedicated jewelry space, but there's maybe one or two areas that you think you could improve upon, or that you could make better? Let me know. And if you'd like to, share some photos of your setup, I'd love to see. You can just tag me at Jewelry Resellers Podcast on Instagram. And I'd love to see your setup. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pictures of my setup, and I will post them on Instagram in case you're curious to see what I'm working with. I will tell you up front that it's not anything spectacular and it's not anything super expensive or fancy or any of that, but it does work for me, and I have no problem sharing it. All right. So I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Again, if you'd like to connect with me, or if you'd like to listen to past episodes, or anything related to this podcast, you can find all of that at jewelryresellerspodcast.com. Again, that's jewelryresellerspodcast.com. All right, friends, thank you so much, and I will check in with you again really soon.